So, what am I talking about here? Silhouette. What do I mean by that? It's pretty obvious. You probably understand what I'm saying. But you may not have really given it the credence it deserves, or given it the amount of thought and consideration it deserves. If you have any kind of interest in competing in the sport of bodybuilding, stepping on a stage and comparing yourself to others, you definitely should consider your silhouette. I just got back from the gym myself. Pretty stout back day. So of course I'm going to drink some more useless supplements because I got nothing better to do with my money and time. Anyway, the silhouette is pretty much of a pretty good rule of thumb is if you are one of these fortunate people that early on, as the musculature begins to develop, you have a pleasing silhouette, then you definitely have very good genetic potential for the sport of bodybuilding. And basically for any physique type of contest where there's going to be comparisons made. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to do well if you don't have a pleasing, silhouette. The majority of people do not have a really particularly stunning silhouette. And that's why when somebody comes along who does, it goes a long way. You get a lot of traction out of that. Perfect example that's close to home is young Andrew Castor. When you look at Andrew Castor, or I look at him, or anybody looks at him, you can see he's got that certain something. It catches your eye. In a lineup, your eye goes directly to Andrew. Is his physique perfect yet? No. Not by far, by any means. It's far from perfect right now. There are still things that need to be worked on, and that's why he's taking a solid year, especially after Gary Udit gave him that exact advice, the same thing I've been telling him for quite a while. So he's going to take a whole entire year and try to finish off his physique and come back and try and get a pro card. That's where he's at. There's no advantage to him to continue doing, these smaller shows. There's just no point to it. He has that silhouette, and even if you don't realize it's the silhouette, that's what it is. Because the eye is drawn to curves. The eye appreciates curves. The eye doesn't like straight lines. When there are straight lines, it looks like something's missing next to the curves. And it's troublesome in your subconscious because it appears it's not finished, it's unfinished, it's not filled in. Whereas, and it'll also make you more critical and focus more in on assessing the area that lacks the curve. It just stands out. It's just a natural thing. That's the way that we're made. When you see curves, that's much more pleasing to the eye. Okay, you can even look at it this way. Look at female physiques. Same deal. The glute, the hamstring, the calf. You know what that looks like from the side? It looks so superior. It just stands out. It makes it outstanding. Same from the front. Quads. The quad has some sweep. Then you have the narrowing into the smaller knee joint, and then you have a calf, right? All those curves. Maybe have some hips, which is fine, but then it narrows into a waist and it flares out again. So it's all about curves, shoulders. That's why small details that you may initially think are unimportant, like calves and forearms, they are every bit as important, if not to some degree more so. You can have mediocre, biceps, triceps, as long as everything is present and you have continuous curves, you'll have a nice silhouette. You'll have a nice silhouette. The guy that's standing next to you in a lineup who may have much better arms than you, because he's got a lot of holes in the physique, a lot of straight lines, like no forearm. Nice upper arms, no forearm, no calves. And you have forearms and calves. Okay, do forearms and calves win shows? No. However, what they do is trick the eye. They fool the eye because the continuous curvatures, the continuous curves, think about it for a minute. What you look at, if you're a heterosexual, when you see a woman, that catches your eye more than anything, the continuous curves, doesn't it? And in bodybuilding, even at the pro level, not everyone has that. Arnold had a really good silhouette in his heyday. And the proof in that is when you see some of these signature poses that these legendary bodybuilders, they pretty much own those poses. You know, when you see these poses of Arnold, you can see just a silhouette of that man outline. You know that's Arnold. You can see a silhouette of Frank Zane, you know, doing the Cobra pose where he does with the forearms over his head extended in the vacuum. You know that's Frank. Okay, Lee Priest, he pulls that off flawlessly. He also co-owns that pose. You know, certain poses, guys with good silhouettes. Lee Priest is a guy with a really good silhouette, All that mass that he carries at his height on his frame, and his silhouette is complete. There's no straight holes anywhere, no straight lines. It's continuous curves. In just by silhouette, you can identify a lot of guys. And here's one of the biggest mistakes guys make on stage. They try to mimic the poses of legendary bodybuilders that they may admire or they may favor as far as their own tastes that they think looks great. They so badly, you know, want to do, you know, like the Dorian pose, right? Like that Jay does. Jay Cutler, he can pull that pose off. You know, Dorian can pull that pose off, but there's a lot of guys that can't pull that pose off. All right. When you think of Kevin Levrone, his rendition of the Most Muscular, where he's got one leg out in front and one extended behind. Who else could pull that off? He has those continual curves. He's got the hamstring, you know, just everything is there for him to do that, and he owns that pose. That's a very difficult pose for others to replicate. And what happens, especially in the amateur ranks, when guys try to replicate these poses, that they're cutting their own throat. They're cutting their own throat, because when they hit this pose, your mind already thinks you know what that silhouette looks like when you've seen Frank Zane do that pose, or when you've seen Lee Priest do it, or you've seen Jay Cutler do it, or you've seen Dorian Yates do it, or you've seen even Lou Ferrigno, you know, or you've seen Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the guys that really made these poses famous just from the silhouette, when you see an amateur try and mimic these poses, if he can't pull that off and he's not full, he doesn't have enough curves to pull that off, it's glaring. It's glaring. And basically, in my opinion, that's a good way to cost you a placing. That is a perfect way for you to point out to the judges and the crowd where you're lacking, where there are holes in your physique, is to take a classic, legendary pose that is just a signature pose for certain other individuals and try to mimic that pose when you can't hold up to it. But if you have that silhouette, you know, and again, we go back to Andrew Castor because he's familiar, he's, you know, one of us. Andrew can pull off several of these poses. And, you know, I'll put a couple of them up here, embed them in the video so you can see them. Andrew can pull off several of these poses. Because, why? Because his physique is completely finished? No, but because his physique is complete, not finished in a sense that it's, you know, polished and ready to go up against the top guys in the pro ranks. However, for the level where he is at, he can smoke guys that actually have more time invested in the physique in the amateur levels, and guys that have, you know, a better body part here or a better body part there. He has no holes, the silhouette. And it's not possible for everybody to have that. It's a very rare thing. And even if you don't even realize that's what it is, you know, your mind subconsciously is drawn to those curves. So the silhouette is something you really want to focus on. Focus on that silhouette. And that's going to be a pretty good rule of thumb and a pointer to, you know, do you really have good genetics for this? Do you have what it takes? You know, don't decry the potential you may have just because you have stubborn body parts, but work with what you've got. And if you've got a really nice, complete silhouette, and you're going to have a good silhouette with plenty of curves, just that everything is represented, that's going to show pretty early on in your training. And that's going to make you have a special something that most people won't even be able to put a finger on. But people that know what they're looking at and they understand bodybuilding, they're going to know. It's all about that silhouette. Make no mistake. You know, and again, if you don't have it, it doesn't mean you're not going to do well. There are lots of pros that do not have it, but they exploit other things. You know, you got to run what you brung. You got to go with what you have. The hand that genetics has dealt you. But so you can't just give up. But if you're fortunate enough to have that silhouette going for you, that's pretty much an easy ride, if there is such a thing.